Hi, welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, TIFF Senior International Programmer for Canada, and this is The Other Thing I Do. David Lynch died last week, and that left a hole in the world's cinema. Given certain other events of the last few days, I don't have anything positive to contribute, so I'm offering this episode, originally released on September 26, 2017, in which the actor Rick Roberts, whom you might know from dozens of film and television appearances, most recently the short film The Light Before the Sun, directed by a friend of the show, Michael Greyeyes. Well, Rick joined me to talk about Lynch's first feature, the waking nightmare that is Eraserhead. It's one of several episodes devoted to David Lynch's singular artistry, and honestly, I'm happy to share it with you again. This is Someone Else's Movie.
I don't know if not so much I don't think it's my favorite movie, but it's one of those things that when I was younger, I was living in Edmonton, and it was playing at the Princess Theatre, and it must have been not in its original run, because
right.
I was older than that, but before I was into anything to do with acting or anything like that, and I don't know even why I went in, what made me want to go into the theatre, but when I watched it, I had no clue that things like that exist, like that art like that or anything like that. So it blew my mind, and next day I made my brother and a couple of friends come and see it, and they looked at me like I was out of my...
So they watched it as well?
They went to see it, and my brother sitting there kept looking at me, and I'm going, I didn't write it. Suddenly, because he's going, he hated it. He's going, what is this? And I'm going, I didn't make it, I just like it. But it was a bunch of things at that time. My Dinner with Andre was a bit like that too, only I saw that on Laserdisc in the library, and I don't know how it ended up in our house, because nothing in my family life, whatever, but I remember watching that and being just blown away by just the fact of it, I think. And I think there's something in Eraserhead, like I don't know why I equate with the Violent Femmes, that famous Violent Femmes album. There's something of male adolescent sexuality and that I recognize now more than I think back then. I just thought it was really cool, and then now I watch it and I go, oh, that's obvious.
Yeah.
Just that whatever his wrestlings with all that stuff is so clearly in the movie. So I think it has Henry is kind of that thwarted longing and that kind of desperately alone kind of sexual self-loathing.
Yeah.
Which is
repression and the fear of parenthood.
Totally fear of parenthood.
The other thing that didn't occur to me on my first watching either.
Yeah. No, me neither at all. The
metaphor completely missed. Yeah. I mean, I probably had a similar experience. So the first time I saw it in the theater was at the Bloor Cinema here in, I want to guess, 88 or 89. I was taken by a couple of film school friends, and one of them had seen it, one of them had not, and I might have watched the VHS tape of it. I might have seen a bootleg, maybe, but I don't think I had. Maybe a piece of it.
Yeah.
I knew what it was.
Yeah.
But again, listeners who grew up before the internet, you don't know what the world was like. These things would just show up. They would be artifacts that appeared. And
you had to... I remember I was talking to Daniel Brooks, a theater director in town, and he was talking about he had a list of 40 movies that he wanted to see. But when he was a kid, you had to wait for the film to show up in your town.
Sure, yeah.
It had to show up in the cinema, then you had to go that day to see it. Or you just wouldn't...
Yeah, if you were lucky enough to be around when it happened, or television, you had to be home. It used to be that was it.
Yeah.
There was no second chance.
Or when you're renting VHSs, I used to watch all these old French movies, and they looked like shit. And I just thought that's the way movies looked back then. And then DVDs came along, and it's just the VHS looks like like shit.
For years, the only way to see Eraserhead was in a full-frame VHS tape that satisfied nobody.
Yeah.
Although it was released in scratchy 35 I don't think it ever looked pristine.
Right.
But the jump for me was the soundtrack when they remastered it for surround.
Oh, right on.
Which Lynch did sometime in the early 90s, it must have been, because it played TIFF. They had a screening of it at the Uptown One.
Oh, right on.
Which is where I saw it properly for the first time. Because at the Bloor it was fine, but the sound was never very good, and it was muddy anyway.
Yeah.
But because this was the new release, it was a restoration of the print as well, and that was crystal clarity. That was incredible.
Wow.
And I still couldn't explain it to people. I don't think I was capable of it.
Just explain the content of the movie?
Yeah. People would say, like, oh, that movie sounds weird. What's it about? And it's like, well, it's weird. Yeah, that's about right. But it is about all kinds of stuff. It's about, now the narrative to me is watching it and I think, oh, this is David Lynch figuring out what he wants to do. This is his art.
Yes.
And his own struggle with domesticity or what it means to be a person in the world.
Well, even our culture, and I think that is another thing that, because at some point it became clear to me that, because I was brought up, unironically in this culture.
Right.
And there's a kind of something in your brain that goes, something's not quite right about this, but you have no frame of reference. Mm. And then you see something like Eraserhead or Blue Velvet, where it becomes apparent what am I doing? What things that we think of as normal, or so like his life, even though the world is insane in Eraserhead, his life is very mundane, and he doesn't seem to. The beauty of that guy's performance, Jack Vance's performance, is the constant feeling that he's not living his real life, and I think that's very appealing, and I think that's kind of what David Lynch. Even when you say Lynchian, it's that kind of the underbelly beneath this kind of normal, and that explains the soundscape too. Even now, just coming here. Normally, I think in movies, the ambient sound of a city feels distant and benign. Yeah. But when if you shift your attention to it, it is like in Eraserhead, it's a constant,
drone,
menacing drone that's got nuance and just suggests in any room.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing that really stuck with me in watching the remastered version in a theater with the new soundtrack, is that he weaponizes room tone. He
really does. That's
he
a
makes
great way
empty space sound threatening.
Yeah, but it's in a way when you do a play, and the idea of because stage work is like silence, and you go, there is no silence. Yeah. It's actually, we have to agree on whatever the not speaking part is silence. But if you've ever been in real silence, it's shocking. Yeah. We don't actually get. We all agree what is silence, and it's like he kind of violates that agreement in the movie
by violating everything. Yes. by violating our sense of reality and our sense of calm. The most unsettling thing that Lynch does in any movie is hold on someone who's about to scream.
Yes.
He does it all the time, to the point where it should be a trope.
Yeah.
And I should be used to it. And every time, especially when it's Laura Dern for some reason, it's just like, oh, don't do that. It's so unsettling and wrong. Some people were bothered by the shaky head effect in Lost Highway, and other people were freaked out by the rabbits in Inland Empire. I saw it at a theater
I haven't seen that one.
People did not like that scene.
Right.
I saw Inland Empire at the Palm Springs Film Festival in January of 2007, surrounded by elderly theater goers, people who just wandered in because there was a screening in the mall of this.
Sounds like a lovely title.
Film that they recognized with that nice Laura Dern, and they had no idea. I don't think any of them knew who David Lynch was.
Yeah.
And it played like a lead brick. But the rabbit sequence where Lynch incorporates footage of a video thing he'd shot with 3 people wearing rabbit heads.
Oh, okay.
Standing around in a kind of an ordinary, conventional suburban kitchen, that sort of thing.
Right.
People did not like that. You could feel the room shift, and there was all sorts of other hallucinatory imagery, but the rabbit sequences just bothered them.
Well, when I just rewatched Eraserhead with my son, and he actually, I think he admired it, and he said it made him want to make movies, which I think is another thing.
Yeah.
About Eraserhead, it's a bit like punk rock, or
it's absolutely punk rock.
Where it feels to set like you think I could do that, and then you try it and you can't, because the good stuff is tight and considered. So it did make him go. I thought he would like it more, because he does make movies like that. Like he loves strange, but he said, "Oh, it just feels like a student film," which it basically was. Mm-hmm. But he just didn't. I forgot the point I was making. But it was going to be so good.
It was about inspiring. He took inspiration from it, or
it just inspired him to make something to me, and that's also what I took away. And I think it's also originally what I took away from it too, was going, I think I could do that. And then, but you actually watch it and pay attention to it. It's so meticulous. But the other thing we both thought is there's a man that writes down his dreams. There's a man that has a notebook by his bed.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think maybe nobody does like that, is capture, like the idea of the rabbit heads is something essential, absurd, but goes in like a disturbing dream image.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like, when we wake up and you have this dream that you think would be a great idea for a movie, and you start telling it, and then halfway through you go, actually, this is a stupid idea for a movie. He actually just makes the movie.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he doesn't apologize for surrealism. Yeah. He's never tried to explain things. We're halfway through the Twin Peaks revival.
Yeah, about episode 5.
Yeah, and episode 9 just aired, so it's
I guess it's similar.
Yeah. And so everyone is talking about what things mean, and apparently there are some explanations being dropped, and I don't know that I want them. But
that David Lynch is explaining them?
There's a black and white episode, I think it's episode 8, that deals with the origin of the force they call Bob, the root of all evil. Yeah. And I haven't got to it yet, and I don't know that I want to. I don't know that that's what I want from this show. But at the same time, if it's his explanation, I'm kind of curious, because it's not fan fiction. It'll actually be
his actual thing.
A logic to it. Yeah.
But and maybe that's why I also picked Eraserhead, because it just going into... I was late coming to the... I've only ever seen the first season, and I haven't seen the second season. And so I think my son has seen it, so he's explaining...
Okay, yeah.
Bob and things like that. But I started watching it right after John Doyle wrote about the golden age of television. The little thing erupted around that,
mm-hmm.
and then Twin Peaks happened, and no one picked it up. No one picked up that ball.
Yeah,
it's its own thing, and it really, like, even though I do agree it perhaps is the golden age of television in a lot of ways, but there's still something about television that you see it and you know it's not film.
Yeah.
So you go to see a cool off the beaten track film at the film. It's like a Sierra Nevada at TIFF, and you watch the opening shot, which is just held on this street corner for seems like 10 minutes, and you go, whatever this is not television.
Yeah.
So you go, because you're trying to think, what's the difference between television and film now? And you go, you cannot do that on television. And that's when you're watching. I'm watching the original Twin Peaks, going, he is doing his own... There's something very relaxing about watching somebody doing only what they want to do, like an artist. And there's a very few where I suspend my critical judgment, because I'm just in the hands of an artist, and take it away. And every once in a while, when you see something, it's so relaxing, it's so rare, 'cause it's actually so hard to do. The original Twin Peaks for the first season is a lot like that. I think the new one is beyond. It's almost like someone said, "Will you make Twin Peaks?" I'm going to do whatever I want. Yeah. Well, okay, really. Yeah. I'm going to do whatever I want. We'd love to have it, and I'm sure there's some regrets around that.
Yeah.
But there's beautiful like sequences or things where you're, and when you're in the realm like that, of like working with almost pure dream imagery, or whatever part of you you're bouncing your ideas off of is deeper in your subconscious, or is not your Apollonian part of your brain. It's you're making a different agreement with the audience, and I do think he's fully with the Eraserhead is fully making that agreement.
Yeah. With
the audience, even if at that time he thought he even had one.
Yeah, it's remarkable to see something that's so fully formed from a first-time filmmaker. I mean, he'd made shorts, but nothing like this. I mean, nothing like this had ever existed. There are experimental films, there are surrealist films, but I don't think, even now, I don't think we fully appreciate just how important Eraserhead is to cinema, because it did point a new way. And when you brought up punk rock, that makes perfect sense. It is the same thing. It's the Blank City movement in New York, right around the same time. The energy was there to just sort of... Well, that was when punk bands and artists and writers took over the Lower East Side because they could. It was just cheap.
Right.
And Eraserhead was made in I want to say Detroit, but that's probably not right either.
There's some Philadelphia thing in there, but it might have been LA because he was at the AFI, but I don't know where he went to make it, to be honest.
Yeah, it feels like the Rust Belt, right? I mean, it feels like pieces of things have rotted away, but that's the look of the movie.
Yeah, and a lot of it sets too. I mean, obviously there's some exteriors, but
yeah, everything has radiators. It's all steam powered. It's unspoken. Something has changed in the world that we've ended up here, or the world was always like this, and we're nowhere where we can get our bearings.
Yeah, and I also, my original reaction at the idea of plumbing, and even though I never had like a radiator like that, and I think that is the metaphor, the kind of the mystery of what's in the walls, and that's what the sound is, and the angel woman on the vaudeville stage behind the radiator. And it sounds trite to say, but it's like things I knew but I didn't know, like an actual. And it was only until, like, even in the house I live in now, tearing a wall out, I think I only resolved my Eraserhead dilemma when I was going, there's not that many pipes in here.
Yeah.
But you just imagine this place where creatures may or may not live, mice, rodents, bugs. I imagine coils of wires and it's actually quite practical. But this underbelly, and there's a shot in that I think is in Blue Velvet. I think is where he goes into the lawn.
Yeah, and it just pushes downwards into the bugs. Yeah.
And it goes that to me feels like the soundscape in Eraserhead, and that kind of what's beyond that's very urban. So it's very, and that's made that industrial sort of. And I don't know where that came from for him.
I wonder if it isn't also sexual. I mean, his
big time. Yeah.
His issues with sexuality run through all of his work.
And I think he has some troubles.
Well, they're not. Yeah,
not living life troubles, but
exactly.
It has the same troubles I do. I think
in terms of expressing things, this seems more comfortable for him to abstract it into. Yeah. Well, there's all these pipes that I don't fully get. I don't know what they're for, and I don't want to touch them, but maybe I do. And the strange allure that he has for radiators and tubes and pipes and steam, and the sense that if you dig into something deeply enough that all the secrets come out.
Right.
That's probably not how it works.
But it's also like
him, right?
like in Eraserhead, the idea of having a child and getting married and raising a child, and all those cliches are meeting they're all horribly enacted.
Yeah.
But that sense that we all have that's not really who we are, or there's this whole other part of us that is disgusting. It's physical and it's demonic, and that's just who we are. And are those things resolvable? Probably not, ever.
Yeah. Can you reconcile who you want to be with what you are building for yourself and the world you live in?
And what culture brings to you as normal, which brings to you as this is the way it is. You get a house, you have a child, you fall in love, you do all those things, and you will be happy.
Yeah.
And that other thing that we all know about, and that almost is almost never talked about. It's not, and it's certainly not. And that's why something like Eraser or even the image of the rabbits, or those kind of subconscious images, strike people viscerally, so that they actually hate something, hate a movie, or go, I can't fucking watch that, or it's because it actually lands, and your instinct is to dismiss it. I don't think I was shocked, because I think Eraserhead, I think I saw it the once in Edmonton. I'm assuming like 81 or 2. The next day in Edmonton, and then I don't know if I've seen it since.
Really?
Properly.
Since you revisited it.
Since I revisited it, and because sometimes with movies like that, because I did have that experience with Road Warrior, I went, "Aw." I have a special place in my heart for Road Warrior, but I was going, that's the whole thing.
Yeah. It's funny that there was this kind of after the American Renaissance, the new independent cinema thing that happened in '67.
Right.
It took another 10 years for art film to catch up, and so out of that you get Eraserhead, which in its way is the surrealist film version of a Talking Heads song. I think about Once in a Lifetime a lot now. When I and that was years later.
But he came out of art school, so he didn't have a film background. So he came from a different. I think it's also really reveals there's a lot of time in film, television, and in theater, the idea of action and plot moving things forward, which I really believe in, and I really think is. But there's also, and it is in Eraserhead, but also setting up and paying off of images has an energy that's served as well as plot. Mm-hmm. So the little worm creature, which I still don't understand, but it's an image that he sets up and pays off, and then just hands it over to the audience. Yeah. It doesn't really serve, as far as I can tell, any plot purpose.
No, I don't think so. I'm trying to figure it out even now.
And those sperm things, the return of imagery and the elaborating of imagery, which seemed to become more from someone who is interested in visual arts, maybe not temporal storytelling,
right?
Is really instructive, and to trust or to know and to figure out a way that those to have things that resonate very deeply with you, and then just put them out there and then see what happens. It's probably hard to get money to do that.
Yeah, I would.
but it is the way to go, and it's very rare because even in non-corporate environments, it's infected there's a practicality to it, and it requires a level of leaping off that I'm wondering. I'm curious because it feels like with the new Twin Peaks that he has gone off message. He's gone off the grid. But I can watch full episodes of that. I never get bored. But if we look at each other and go, I have no clue what just happened in that. I don't know. Is that Michael Cera character ever going to come back? I thought that was the most brilliant thing that Michael Cera's ever done.
The Wally Brando thing.
Yeah. The Harry Dean Stanton little set piece that's in there. I don't know if that's ever going to... And to sit there and linger on it and to let it play out. Even if Harry Dean Stanton was a lead in the show, would be rare. For him to be just show up. And I don't know the criteria by what David Lynch made the decisions, or however those decisions were made.
Yeah.
But they seem to be from some other place that, once again, asks you just to sit back and wonder about them.
Hey, it's Norm interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Last week, obviously, I wrote about David Lynch. Also, Criterion's new 4K releases of The Mother and the Whore and JoJo Dancer, Your Life is Calling, and Arrow's 4K release of Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io or find a link at the Semcast Blue Sky account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out.
It is his incredible confidence, I think, in assembling these things that's what pulls people back, because there are people arguing I remember at the time when Mulholland Drive came out, which was a television pilot that didn't get picked up, that he retrofitted into a film narrative, and it still has 5 or 6 characters who factor into the very beginning of the movie that never really pay out. Like Robert Forster's in there, and I still don't know what purpose he was supposed to serve. He's obviously going to be a regular on the show, had the show happened. But Justin Theroux's character clearly stops doing whatever it is he's doing to become a function of this other story that they created. The conversation about the thing behind the Winkies is terrifying and unsettling, and clearly would have set something up that they would have paid out in the show. But I suspect he never really knew how he was going to end these things or resolve these things, because the resolution he came up with for the film doesn't really make sense. It makes emotional sense. He creates a narrative where you believe what's happening and you accept it.
Right.
But if you try to explain things from a strictly cause and effect relationship, you can't.
And I wonder if that's the intent. Well, there's a new thing of someone on Facebook about David Mamet won't allow Q&As after his plays anymore.
Oh, I like that.
I do too, but people are complaining about it. But it is something. I mean, David Mamet, I think, seems to have his own problems.
Yes, he's not the David Mamet that we originally started working with.
But to say I don't want people discussing my work that way, I think is fair enough, and it's actually, in a lot of ways, correct to just walk away wondering about it. And we don't actually really have to put too much value in that. My wife's better. I always tend to like how it work. I try to make things work, and I like structure, and so I am constantly. And maybe that's my attraction to Eraserhead, because I am mystified by how those decisions are made.
Right, we're drawn to the thing that we fear the most. So presented with a lack of structure that you aren't responsible for, you can embrace it.
That you see this incredible possibility of just doing what, and a part of me feels like that Twin Peaks came out of because of the internet and all the like going, we want like people, the demand for it, and the demand for it maybe liberated him to go, I'm going to just let my brain explode onto the...
Yeah. But he's been doing that since Mulholland. I mean, since Lost Highway, really. I don't think he's made a conventional narrative movie since...
But that great, like the Twin Peaks thing is insane.
Well, Inland Empire is similarly
is insane.
Unmoored. It's unstructured. It has a private eye narrative, sort of, but it doesn't really. And it's...
But the mix of, like in Twin Peaks, a mix of amateurism, like non-actors acting badly, great actors acting greatly. There's no contrived world, or seemingly no plan that I can imagine the Naomi Watts character being married to Dougie as he was originally presented.
Right. That's true.
Like, I can't, so I don't know, and part of me goes, this seems right to me, I'm doing it, or I don't want to consider it, I want to put it out there and let people sort it out, which you cannot work that way. You almost cannot work that way anymore.
Yeah. Well, not if you're taking notes, not if you're answerable.
Yes.
And I think that's the appeal. He has Mark Frost working with him to maybe ground... I don't know if Frost is there to ground Lynch or ground the project, to sort of give the collaboration that way. It isn't just one person's vision, and it's more palatable to the people writing the checks.
Or just the necessities of directing and writing at the same time.
That's also probably part of it. I mean, you couldn't maintain that workload, not 19 hours of new story.
And he must have some kind of similar aesthetic, because the writing is awesomely bad. But in the way, that was my original plan. If I have nothing to say, just like those, when you say the suspended scream, the other thing he does is has really mundane dialogue and just leaves huge swaths of silence, or between it, so you actually have to hear it, and you hear its absurdity. And in some cases, particularly in the new Twin Peaks, a little bit in Eraserhead, there's also, it's not even a dry delivery, it's a mundane, but it's still lived in.
Yeah, it's stylized and naturalistic at the same time. Because the dialogue is, I'm thinking of like the cowboy in Mulholland Drive. If you do good, you will see me once more. If you do bad, you will see me twice more.
Right.
No one talks like that. Yeah. And it's delivered in such a casual way that it's not cartoon villainy.
Yeah.
But when it comes out of this person's kind of high, reedy delivery, it's unsettling.
Yeah.
Because we know what it means, even though we don't know what it means.
We don't know what it means.
Yeah. And everyone in a Lynch film has that ability, with the occasional actor who isn't properly integrated. Balthazar Getty in Lost Highway kind of struggles with it here and there, but I think the character's supposed to struggle with it, so it's okay.
But Twin Peaks feels like feels like a perfect mishmash of all that stuff.
Yeah.
And a real celebration of, and it makes the kind of Americana stuff really work.
That's true. I mean, Blue Velvet has imagery, but it doesn't integrate the Americana. It doesn't integrate the theme with the actions, because we go right into the underworld. We're not. Right. We're never normal.
But we have the Kyle MacLachlan, Laura Dern as kind of the ideal, like,
right, yeah,
50s, and he always seems, and this is in Eraserhead, but I can't tell. He's got the kind of the Madonna, the Virgin, and the dark lover, like the Laura Dern and Isabella Rossellini, and Kyle MacLachlan's sexuality feels very similar to Henry's in Eraserhead, where there's the
push and pull,
the love that he should be doing, and then the neighbor in Eraserhead, where it feels wrong and real and impossible and not real. feels more to do with the fantasy and more to do with the sounds the plumbing is making. And
well, and also in Eraserhead, we start with an established domesticity.
Yeah.
So he would be straying, as opposed to Blue Velvet, where I think Jeffrey's supposed to be home from college, so he's still young enough that he hasn't picked his path yet.
Right, yes.
And so the whole movie is a battle for his soul.
Right.
Which turns out to fall somewhere in the middle, because he kind of doesn't mind being corrected.
But the thing, the woman, the lady in the radiator, this is where I can't tell who she is in the movie. I can't tell. And I can't tell, when I was rewatching, I was going, the things that, her presence in the movie was the first thing that came into mind. Like, a thing that struck me, the sounds of the radiator and her presence behind there, which in the original was, for me, a lot more menacing. Like, I felt there was something dangerous about that, and I don't...
So she's not offering escape, she's a trap. She's offering menace.
Because she's got those freakish cheeks that you can't tell, but she's so naive. Like, she's a beautiful actor in the movie. She's like a really great actor. But I can't tell if her need for him is drawing him into something. And it is ambivalent. Because there's, at the end, he's loves being held by her, but at the same time, you're not sure if a good thing has happened to him or a bad thing has happened to him.
Yeah, it's presented in such a way, like that last shot goes on a little too long. You're trapped with it, and you start to feel trapped. And then the solarizing thing happens with the light coming up and that incredible overpowering brightness.
Yeah, and the sounds.
Something. It could be release. It could be trap closing.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering in terms of his relationship with the kind of like the layers of how sexuality manifests itself or doesn't manifest itself in our culture, and I can kind of see there's a kind of obvious symbolism to who Mary is and who the neighbor is, but with her, because she's the third, and I can't tell exactly.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is a bad thing at all. I'm just kind of, but that was one thing that I was going. That's the thing that I really remember. I remember the piles of dirt from just these things. I'm going, because I saw it over 30 years ago, and I think a lot of the images and the idea of odd silences and it has really stuck with me. Like, I'm trying to think about, like, in theater, the idea of silence has always bothered me. I even tried to write about it. I've tried to go, like, why are we agreeing that this is silent? And I'm actually wondering if that goes back to just Eraserhead and how much of those images feel like primal or source images for me, but how much of them only feel that way because they resonated, because they were illuminated from something I had already intimated. Because I do have I think a genuine anger around feeling tricked by my own culture around product and the kind of, this is the way it is, the kind of suburban, placid, and it's getting ripped away even more. Like, I've just read The Inconvenient Indian by Thomas King, which is just brutal, and all this stuff around Canada 150 and all this, and I'm Not Your Negro, this kind of in heaven, like this kind of we're happy, we're middle class, and we're white, and everything is great, but we know something is wrong, which, well, I'm Not Your Negro completely shattered. But I think that was basically almost what David Lynch's project is, because he has these kind of, sometimes not so much in Eraser, but these kind of kitschy sort of cliched visions of Americana, and then the violence that goes against. There's no irony in a lot of that violence. It seems intentionally visceral, like the killing of the baby in Eraserhead. Is grotesque, which highly naturalistic. Like, it's highly I mean, it's not a real creature, but there's nothing stylized or put on about that moment.
There's no fantasy involved. These
are guts and the actual inner workings. That's where, like, the plumbing in our organs and pulling those things out of his wife and throwing them against the wall. That we are animal, violent, awful biological things, and things come out of us.
Yeah. Well,
and that's who we are, but we spend most of our time pretending that we're not there, or we're creating this fantasy of ourselves as not that.
Yeah.
And when those things come into conflict, like in child making, it's
it's explosive.
It's also, I've seen children come out. It's not. There's nothing like, Rick, you can come in now.
Yeah.
Oh, and everyone's like wrapped in. We are animals.
Yeah. Sure.
And it's a violent, ridiculous. And I do think I was also thinking, Eraserhead's also it's a horror movie.
Sure. Yeah.
And because it is rooted in the fear of the female reproductive system, which I think is essentially what almost all horror is about. And
it's either birth or death. Yeah.
Birth or death or loss of virginity. It's all those the slasher movies.
That's true.
Halloween. I mean, Alien in a lot of ways. I'm trying to think of most great horror movies can we go, once upon a time there was a little girl. And there's the ones that pop into my mind. Maybe not The Shining.
Well, but The Shining is about the failure of the family.
Yeah, for sure.
From the inside.
Yeah.
Like the father is trying to kill the mother pretty much the whole time.
And it's her battling that monster over a child, basically saving a child. So I guess in a way it is.
And I think that the moment you start talking about radiators, you have to imagine steam and release valves and pressure.
Yeah.
And Eraserhead is all about that explosion not happening.
Yes.
Just the whatever Henry is going to do to resolve this, someone is going to get hurt.
Yes.
And by turning that on, by turning the child into something horrific. I mean, there's one reading that I've considered where the child is perfectly normal, but that's how he sees it.
Right.
He just can't conceive of having a responsibility like that, and so it has to be monstrous.
Yes.
And so his in-laws are horrible. I mean, this could just all be someone's psychotic break that we're witnessing.
Well, it certainly goes. I mean, you're certainly never in realism, but in the agreement with the movie, like when he actually, his head is turned into erasers.
Yeah.
And then he wakes up again, or he comes back to reality, and you go, did he sleep with the neighbor?
Yeah. What did that represent?
Where did his wife go? What is that creature? Because the creature is innocent, like crying, and the way the kids do is gets sick and he cares for it and laughs at his sexual failure.
Yeah.
Seems manipulative. In this recent viewing, there's not as much horror for me around the kid, but in the original watching of it, there's more a sense of a danger around.
Yeah,
That could be where I was in my reproductive cycle.
I found it a lot more. I found the baby itself a lot more disturbing the first couple of viewings, but I wonder if that's not simply because it is disturbing.
It is very disturbing.
Now I'm used to it.
Yes.
I've just seen that.
Yes.
I've seen this film. I know what's going to happen.
Yes.
You can relax in a different way when you watch a film the second time. Or the third or the fourth. And even now, I'm still trying to figure out how the hell they built it. It's something Lynch has never talked about. Even in this latest documentary that came out earlier this year, David Lynch, The Art Life, he won't go into detail. He just, we shot it.
But he's like Beckett in that sense. But and Mamet not wanting to talk about it. When you get into that, and I'm sure that you could figure it out.
Yeah, it can't be. I mean, it can only be a few things.
And the fact they had no money, like it was that, and the thing is pretty animated, like it's pretty great.
Yeah.
But to not let the conversations go in that direction, so that you can actually let the thing be its thing.
Not talked about it. Yeah. But he's one of those filmmakers too who became, I think, a lot less interesting once he went into therapy. He started to express things differently right after Twin Peaks, I think. And then, his most conventional film came out then around that time, in The Straight Story in '99, which is a wonderful.
I've never seen it.
It's great. It's simple.
It's Richard Farnsworth
and Harry Dean Stanton. Farnsworth driving a riding mower across America to see his brother.
Yeah.
And all it is everything that Lynch has ever dealt with. It's just completely divorced from his trappings. It's simply representational. What you see is what's happening, and it's an ordinary American story.
Right.
But it's marvelous. And then he went right back into at the same, like because he had just made Lost Highway, and then on the other side of that was Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire, and it's like this little moment where he considers that maybe there's another way.
Yeah.
And that making a conventional movie is as revolutionary an act for him as anyone else making a David Lynch movie. And it's maybe the bookend to Eraserhead in a weird accidental way, because it does suggest that this is how it would have worked if you just had a normal life. These are the things you would have done. This is the movie that you would have ended up making.
I'm going to watch that next.
It's very good.
Yeah, I've always wanted to, and for some reason I've just never seen it.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating to see a normal, in inverted commas, movie come out of Lynch, because he's so clearly able to do it. He just doesn't want to.
Yes, but Elephant Man's pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm. It's just beautifully realized.
Yes, it is. It's a beautiful film, but I was actually surprised, and I always want to know the story of how. I mean, I've watched interviews and stuff. Mm-hmm. And you see someone like going from Eraserhead to Elephant Man, it's night and day.
Yeah,
and there's no.
You know who the producer was, right? The great Mel Brooks, who saw Eraserhead and said, "Let's see what you can do with money."
Yeah, and that's like someone just recognizing an artist.
Yeah,
but I think it takes outrageous courage to go say, "I think the Eraserhead guy's our guy."
Yeah,
because they can go anywhere.
And what you get is this beautiful. I mean, it's similar to Eraserhead in its steam. It's it's a Victorian world powered by gases and repression. It's kind of similar,
and this kind of hideousness within, in that line that resonates for everybody. I'm not an animal. I'm a human being.
Yeah,
and is that theme, which is I think in most of his movies, is the culture, the agreed culture, the repressed end, and the thing underneath that we battle, whether we.
Yeah, well, I mean that it's in Twin Peaks as well. It's the sense of an invasion of something that is penetrating and shattering, which again can be sexual in its expression. But with the Elephant Man, it's the shock, the horror, and then the sadness that settles in afterwards. Eraserhead has a melancholy to it because Henry is resigned in a lot of ways to the life that he's leading, but he doesn't seem to like it.
But he also kills an innocent. I mean, he does kill that when the killing of the baby is it's murder, fully a killing of a baby. There's nothing. The baby's reaction is.
Oh no! It's horrible.
It's a horrible reaction.
Yeah, and the movie doesn't approve of it at all. There's no sense that the film sees it as an escape or.
But you also feel like there's nothing for him that he wasn't meant.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe that is the part that gives you the release valve and it's an absurdism. You can kind of, maybe this isn't real.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from being a movie, but within the parameters of the story, that maybe this is a fantasy. Maybe this like you said, this baby is.
It's an abstraction.
An abstraction, but.
So maybe this. Now that you're describing it this way, I'm thinking, well, this is The Shining too. Like it's the same story.
Yeah, true.
Really
yeah,
is. You're trapped in a place you don't want to be, and your family's suddenly monstrous, and you can't handle it anymore.
And the idea of, ghosts and haunted, like the some kind of murder through the window in Eraserhead, the neighbor, and I was reading, there's a scene that was cut out that seemed really weird about more life in the building. And although it's not, the Shining is actual ghosts, or however probably, you want to manifest that.
80%.
Something's going wrong there. But that feeling of the building, being the lady in the radiator and having presences and being haunted. And,
like a malevolent space.
And, the dirt and whatever the fiber stuff that is part of the real world of the shit.
Yeah, the thing you can't ignore.
You can, but there it is. It's like no one questions it. No one gets a broom.
That's true. It's just accepted.
Yeah.
People having seizures, those weird little turkeys.
Oh yeah, everything. The little chicken dinner is the other thing that it's probably the first image that I remember the repressed sexuality of the mother.
Yeah,
and it's so sexual. And father obsessed with plumbing. Yeah, this time around I watched it. I had that with an unrelated movie, The Big Lebowski. It was not unrelated in terms of it's never resolved in my mind.
Okay.
It never lands in the best kind of way because there's things of it that are just absurd, like the dream sequences in particular.
Right.
But it's the kind of movie I can just pick up and watch twice in a row and not. And the same thing with Eraserhead. I watched it and then right after my son was there, and you have to see Eraserhead because he had never seen it. And, So I thought I'll just start watching because there's something he's working on. The guy, the kind of demonic character with the levers, who I also can't figure out. I just wanted him to see that, and then we ended up watching it. But I was saying I had just seen it, and still the images are because they're. I mean, Big Lebowski doesn't have this, but because there's something that's. It just all feels genuine. So anything that has genuine. I used to think about Peter Sellers' acting. Okay. You can think about it and talk about it, but you can't. You have to see it because in that kind of comic timing, there's a kind of grace in there that you have to experience.
Right.
And so, someone said that about poetry. The truth of poetry is you have to be reading the poem to actually have that feeling. You can't take it away with you in the same way that it's in the structure of the poem. And I feel that with the images in Eraserhead, they're living images in a way that, like my older son saw the new Spider-Man movie and kind of it just feels a bit dead on arrival to him because he feels like all this stuff has been like it's nothing.
Yeah, it's the sixth one in 15 years.
Yes.
It's
and the sketched in characters, and you go, there's no, and you go, and you understand that's not what that movie is, but there's no. You can walk away from that movie and still have it with you, and you can keep coming back to something like Eraserhead because it has the energy of, for me anyway, the energy of a great poem. Where you watch it, like him getting that little hookworm, putting their opening, and then it becomes like, and then something happens. So it's just kind of always living that you can never land on it once you figure it out.
Yeah, it won't be left alone. Yeah. It won't be left behind.
Yes.
You're stuck carrying it around.
Yeah.
So that actually brings us to the closer, the captain question, the final question in the podcast is always the same. What, if anything, of Eraserhead have you used or stolen or borrowed or incorporated into your own creative DNA?
I think a lot of my it was interesting because when I think of Waiting for Godot, I always think of that as kind of something I keep coming back to, but I actually do think it is Eraserhead. I think Eraserhead and David Lynch, and there's artists that you kind of, who I think, to my mind, maybe it's not well informed, who are actually invent something, and they give you permission. So you get permission from Beckett because it feels like he made something out of nothing and shifted the way we look at theater and literature. I feel with Eraserhead, and then watching the new Twin Peaks too, going, you can do anything. Like this artist gives you permission to do anything. And so a lot, not so much in my acting work, but a lot of my writing work, that's where it tends to go, if I can get it to go there, and is to try and scramble and let images kind of stand up, like stick out like sore thumbs, and let people work them out on their own if they can, or be able to say, I don't know what that means, but I think there's something in it that I like. But very specific, and for my acting, and this never occurred to me.
Oh yeah.
And this is just a naturalism, is the notion of subtext, which is kind of an absurd notion. It's actually, the phrase means nothing to me, that you would have text running in your head. But the idea that no one can read your mind, and you can you don't have to conjure emotional things. If you have a strange mind, you can think strange thoughts.
Right.
And that's how our minds actually work, is they work in a dreamlike way. So I was doing a scene a couple of years ago, and I was really having trouble. It was like someone playing my wife, and it's just, I couldn't. So I just started creating weird images in my head. I'm like sitting there going, no one can read and I can. So I would say that the realm of my thinking was closer to Eraserhead.
Okay.
Than I would normally think would be impractical, but it's actually not impractical. That you can think whatever you want to think, like, and that kind of is the courage that particularly on Eraserhead, because I wrote a strange play a number of years ago, nowhere near as strange as Eraserhead. And it was pretty vulnerable making when it played, and I've thought, people are going to think I'm crazy. I was sitting in the audience going, that's not a well person made that. And one of my best friends came up to me, and as a joke, but I didn't take it like that. He goes, "You're out of your mind." I'm like, "Oh my God, I am." But I was they were showing rough cuts of Eraserhead, and someone got up and yelled at them, "Oh, this is not how people talk," and this is,
right.
We're outraged by it. And how do you keep going? Because me and most people I know would go, "I quit," or "I'll do something else." And I admire John Cassavetes for that as well. Like,
just the idea that this is the only thing you want to do, the only thing you can do, so you have to find a way to do it.
And it's like that Charlie Kaufman speech about, do something truthful because it'll make someone 100 years from now less lonely. I'm totally paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But the idea that because the images in Eraserhead are so truthful, that they do make you less lonely when you watch them because you still recognize them. But I would say that, I would say I don't even know if I would maybe necessarily be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for possibly Eraserhead around that time. Because it was that and seeing a Fringe show were the two things that made me... Because I never really saw unusual movies or mostly television, Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah, there wasn't much out there that was...
There wasn't. In Edmonton...
Well, and on television generally.
On television, nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember they pulled The Exorcist because it was too satanic.
Wow.
But there was no opportunity to see that, and theater-wise, I never went. But it was the Edmonton Fringe Festival that... So in that way, Eraserhead affected my work. It's possible that I wouldn't be doing it, or wouldn't be attracted to the things I'm attracted to at all had I not seen that movie when I was probably in this weird psychosexual space and wondering if the culture I was living in is real at all.
Yeah. Well, you just, and you're just in that rubbery stage where you're open to anything.
Yeah.
And you happen to see it at the right time. But that's what I love about the art. The art doesn't change. We change.
It's true.
So there will always be 17-year-olds discovering Eraserhead, even 100 years from now if we're still around.
Yeah.
And it'll still be just as impenetrable and strange.
Yes.
And you can read, as you were saying, you can read a book about it, but until you see it, you don't really understand what it feels like to see this film.
Yes.
And you were there at the right time, but it was there for you too.
It was whoever programmed it at the Princess Theatre didn't know what happened. But I still have a visceral memory of being really jarred. And perhaps I think of it as a horror movie because it not only was it kind of is, but it was kind of horrifying in the image of the baby or woman's crushing. I don't even think I even conceived that they were sperm creatures at the time, and that the bed could open up and be a weird swamp. Those things just wouldn't occur to you outside of... it wouldn't have occurred to me at all.
Yeah, but that's why we have David Lynch, to just sort of point at it, to put those images out there and say, look, no one else can do this.
He's pretty unique. There's a couple other... I only think of one offhand whose movies I don't even particularly enjoy. I only see Enter the Void, Gaspar.
Oh, Noé, yeah.
It's not a great movie, but at the same time, you got to go, no one was telling that guy what to do.
Yeah, that's true.
I do it really, when that happens, I go, that movie certainly was not an Eraserhead thing for me, but I remember totally relaxing, especially when the camera's flying through the kind of porn hotel, goes up into an airplane, comes back down and going, what? Like, they had to plan that. Like, who?
Yeah.
But then you just kind of relax. But anyway,
because you're in someone else's control in the same way, but it's just not.
Yes, he's doing exactly, and there's something thrilling, talent, no talent, whatever, that someone's just putting a thing out there that they want to say, here it is. I might have failed.
That's art.
That's art. It is true.
My thanks to Rick Roberts, who's out there somewhere making art right now. And thanks to David Lynch for everything. You can find Rick on Instagram at RickRobertsActor, all one word. And of course, Eraserhead is available from the Criterion Collection on Blu-ray and DVD in an excellent special edition. It's also streaming on the Criterion Channel in North America and on Max in the US, and available to rent or buy on various VOD services in the US and Canada. You can find me on Blue Sky at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 41 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get the new booster as soon as you can. I'll see you next week.